What's been the impact of the coronavirus on student ministry? Well, today we're talking with another youth worker as he shares his story of what ministry looks like now with the coronavirus. This is the Youth Worker Daily. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Youth Worker Daily, where we hope to encourage youth workers with tools, tips, resources, and helps so that you thrive in your ministry. My name is Jay Hyam, and today we're talking with another youth worker, hearing a little bit from their story of what it looks like to be in ministry, to roll into an exciting new school year with ambitions and goals, only to have the bottom fall out as coronavirus has pretty much changed how we do ministry. But the change can be a good thing if we learn from what it is that we've had to kind of overcome because of these shutdowns and stay-at-home orders and not being able to be with our students the way we normally would be with our students. Today, I'm talking with Ryan Schaible, who is the youth director out at Good Shepherd Church in Naperville, Illinois. And he has some great insight and some great wisdom. I think you're going to be encouraged by some of the things that he shares. You may want to have a piece of paper and a pen nearby to write down some of the ideas that they've kind of had and have incorporated into their ministry, and some really good things that God is continuing to do through Ryan, his leaders, and his students. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. This is me talking with Ryan Schaible from Good Shepherd Church in Naperville, Illinois. Here, check this out. Hey everybody, I'm here with Ryan. Ryan, how you doing, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled. I'm so glad that you are here and willing to jump on and have a conversation here as we talk about ministry, a little bit of coronavirus maybe, a little bit of moving forward, kind of see where the conversation goes, and hopefully how we might encourage other youth workers who are out there maybe in the same situations we are, dealing with how do we connect with students, how do we connect with parents. It's been quite an adventure these last couple of weeks of us just trying to learn how to do online ministry. I don't know about you, but I am sorely missing being near my students. We had our youth group last night, and yeah, just it's crushing me not to be around my students the way we've been. So,
it's just not the same, right? Like none of us got into this youth ministry world, whether you're full-time, part-time, volunteer, nobody got into it going, I'm really looking forward to leading a Zoom Bible study. Like no one got into it for that. So.
Absolutely not. And it was, well, I'm sure this will come up in a little bit, but like it was fun to start with, but I feel like I'm working harder to do online ministry than I've ever worked in student ministry before. So it's
sure.
Exhausting. I'm really feeling worn out. Wait, Ryan, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about you, maybe some what called you into youth ministry, the process of getting you to where you are, a little bit about your church, some family info, and kind of what your aspirations or goals or whatever it is that you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Wisconsin, just outside Milwaukee. And my kind of entrance into the youth ministry world was as a high school student when one of the pastors of our church said, hey, can you lead this middle school small group? I had no idea what I was doing. And I still look back on that going, they had no idea what they were saying when they asked me that. Like, I can't believe they gave me that opportunity. So that was kind of my first entrance into it, though. And I kind of fell in love with it, in part because for me growing up too, church always kind of became a place of safety for me, in the midst of some family things, in the midst of friendship struggles, a lot of these things that we help students with on a daily basis. I was going through as a student, but it was church leaders, it was my small group and my friends in that community that really got me through some of the hardest parts in my kind of teenage years of things. And I originally thought about going to school to be either a history or science teacher for middle school or high school, but kind of fell in love with a calling and really felt the direction of like, no, youth ministry is a thing. Because I love the idea of working with students, but I also didn't want to be in a classroom. I didn't want to be kind of stuck in that. And what I found is I loved helping students navigate their life in the way that leaders did for me. And so that was kind of my entrance into youth ministry. So if you trace it from there, I've been in about youth ministry for about 20 years now,
Nice.
Full-time ministry since about 2008 when I graduated college. I went to Carthage College up in Wisconsin as well. A few years after that, completed a master's degree in ministry from Wheaton College, but just have been running in ministry this whole time. I've been at my current church, Good Shepherd Church in Naperville, for about 3 years now, having spent almost 10 previously at another church in the Chicago area here, and just love it every day. Of course, again, as you said, we're in a time where it's ministry unlike any of us had ever thought about, but it's I'm continuing to see God still at work in the midst of it, and that's, I think, the encouraging part. On top of now being a homeschool teacher for a 7 and an 8-year-old, a job I never thought I would have to have. But thankfully, so my wife and I are parents of, as I said, a 7 and an 8-year-old. We were their foster parents originally,
Cool.
and about 2 years ago became their adoptive parents. And so I love my kids, Robert and Shania, so much. I think I'm a better dad than I am a homeschool teacher, but we're all figuring it out together. I mean, they don't want to learn from me, and I'm not great at teaching them, which may just be a reminder that teaching wasn't my career path and I was meant to be a youth pastor. But we're figuring it out. But our family is on this journey together. I met my wife doing youth ministry in college as well, and so we both had a heart for this for pretty much the time that we've known each other. And so youth ministry has just been a part of our family and what we've done over all these years.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Yes, very similar for us. Wife and I got involved. We were single, doing youth ministry in different places, got together over a summer camp experience, and definitely felt the call to be in youth ministry myself. So yeah, it's kind of fun when your spouse recognizes that call and they can step into that world with you, because it definitely makes youth ministry a lot easier when your spouse is on board. You can count on them and they kind of get you a little bit. So that's really awesome. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about ministry. We're going to kind of steer towards this whole Corona thing, and then really what we're going to focus on, hopefully, is what things might look like moving forward. But I find it helpful to set the stage a little bit. So maybe talk about what ministry was like for you at Good Shepherd prior to 2020. How were things going in your ministry there? You said you were there almost 3 years there now. What did that look like for you?
Absolutely. So I came on here in 2017 in a kind of a new role for me. Almost 10 years prior, where I was at a church, solo leading as far as staff perspective, leading youth ministry, leading middle school, high school age levels, and then at Good Shepherd, moving into a role where I was more of a head of staff sort of role. We have a middle school leader and a high school leader, as well as a young adult ministry leader. And so my job now is to kind of think big picture, to do big direction for student ministry as we have it. But I came on in a season where the church was really looking to do some new things. The person in my role ahead of me, she's still a part of our church. She's fantastic. I learned so much from her, but she had been in that role pretty much as long as the church had a student ministry role. She had been a part of it in some way. So she had a huge investment with families in that church, but she knew, and the church knew, it was time for a new chapter. It was time to kind of head in a new direction. So part of my kind of transition into that role was helping them navigate some big program changes, as well as just some different ways of thinking about youth ministry, which is some of the things I get really excited about. I love getting to kind of think about, how do we create really effective programming? How do we train adult leaders well? How do we think about youth ministry, not just from a Sunday night perspective, but from a church-wide perspective? So we started navigating some big changes. Within high school, we switched from having a weekly gathering at the church all together as a bigger group to a couple smaller gatherings in homes during that time, where students could build a little bit deeper relationships and those kind of things, while also, though, providing additional space for our younger, more middle school students to have a little bit more freedom of the building, usage of that, where they kind of need that more structured ministry gathering together. And we were seeing a lot of really great things coming out of that. Our staff team really working together. We came into, the 2019-2020 school year with some great ideas, and we were really building some great strength. And then right around mid-March, everything kind of fell apart. Right? Everything changed suddenly, which feels like that was 4 years ago. But it's hard to imagine that was only a couple months ago. But at the same time, wow, it was a couple months ago already. So.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. What were some of the things as you got into the 2019-2020 school year? What were some of those big plans, and where was that momentum coming from, and what was God doing prior to March?
Sure. So we were putting a huge emphasis into giving away as much leadership as we could, whether that was really investing in our small group leaders to really take the role on that main relational ministry, but also giving away as much leadership to students as we could. Obviously not just going, here's a project, go figure it out, really building those mentoring, coaching relationships. But we were heading into this year saying we want to put students on the microphone as much as possible. We want to get students up telling their story. We want students leading in whatever way that would make sense for them, with adult leaders by their side. But rather than it really being staff driven or even being adult leader driven, we wanted to do as much as we could to say, this is student ministry, which should be students doing ministry. And so we were really working on some great things with that. Some things that, whenever you're kind of shifting a mindset, shifting a culture like that, it can take a lot to kind of get everybody on board, students and adults and other leaders especially. But I think we were really building towards something because people were seeing, like, it added depth, it added meaning, it added significance to the students that were leading, as well as the students that, were listening to their peers share their story and everything like that. So we were really starting to see some great strength coming out of that. What was able to happen when we put students up in front of their peers and really put the focus of ministry on them.
Right. Out of curiosity, what drove that mindset change for you guys? Was there a book, a resource, or just you felt as a church leadership, this is the direction we need to go?
I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things. I can't point to like, oh, we read this book and we saw it. But, when you look at everything with Gen Z and even the up and coming generation behind them, they only want to be a part of things that they feel actually has significance.
Right.
And they don't want to just sit in a chair and be talked to. They want to be a part of it. They want to be able to know that, hey, if I show up to your Sunday night thing, is it going to matter? And we found that the more they had ownership of it, the more they could help give it meaning. That I could spend all day telling you why I think coming and being a part of a student ministry, being part of a youth group is an important thing. But if a student doesn't feel it themselves, they're not going to show up. They're not even going to bring their friends to it. So they get to add the meaning that they so crave because we're giving them the opportunity to design it how they want.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think that's an up and coming thought that's starting to break through a little bit here. Is what does it look like? We use the term at our church, passing on the keys. So recognizing that the leadership in place can't be doing this forever, but if we don't start recognizing a younger generation and the abilities that they have, and then passing on those keys, we're not going to have leadership in the future because we haven't taken time to invest in the next generation. And we're in that same place. That's why I was curious to see what it was that has precipitated this new swing of momentum for you guys. Because that's kind of where we are as a church. The keychain leadership thing is what we've been talking a lot about. So yeah, it's kind of cool to hear that you guys are having some success with that. So coming into 2020, 2019, you start putting these things into place. Things are starting to happen. Students are maybe taking some ownership in some stuff. What goals? What things did you kind of like? This year, we really want to capitalize and hopefully see these things happen. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think coming into this year, our goals were really focused a lot on kind of the relational end of things. That we as a ministry were really good at putting on exciting programming. We're we can put on some pretty fun program, but we are noticing that it was easy for students to fall to the side, to step out, to just remain in the back because they didn't have a lot of those personal connections with a lot of people. And so it was our goal to really emphasize, it was one of the motivating factors of switching to a house group model with high school ministry, but also in just the way that we were training small group leaders and things. Like, we wanted the emphasis to be on that every student was known by as many people as possible. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're best friends with every other kid that's there, but do people know when they're gone? Do people notice that when they walk in the door? Does somebody know their name so that they're greeted as early as possible? Like, can they identify a handful of people that they really trust within the ministry, both in their peers as well as adult leaders? Like, that was our goal for this year, was to really build and emphasize those relationships. And that was not only in what we taught and how we taught it, but also just in like the way that small groups function, in the way that leaders would operate and do things outside of that Sunday night programming. We really wanted that emphasis to be on, like, we know you, we see you, we miss you when you're not here, so that students really felt like they're a part of this and not just someone who attends it.
That's awesome. And you've started seeing some of the fruit of that?
Absolutely. Again, and I think the more, when we reach out to a student, if I'm working on a theme for a Sunday night, and the more I've built these connections with students, the more that other leaders have built connections, we're going through and we can say, oh, I don't want just a student to tell their story. I want to talk to that student. And then we call them up and say, I want you to be a part of it. And that's that personal invite. They went, oh, they know me enough that they've known at least enough of my story that they want to be a part of this, which is just a reflection of that relationship that we've built. And then by getting them involved in a leadership perspective, then that only reminds other students, like, hey, you matter here. Like, this isn't just something we want to teach you. This is something we want you to be a part of. We were starting to really see the fruit of that. And again, it's a slow process that didn't happen overnight. We were several months into the school year and it still wasn't exactly the way that we want, but I think we were starting to see a change of mindset across the board from students and leaders the more we kind of emphasize that.
Wow, that's fantastic. It's super exciting. So you roll into 2020, starting to see some fruit. Things are kind of moving forward. And then you get word that however it looked, church was changing, youth group was changing. What were your first thoughts when all of that came to be?
I think for a while, I was a leader that kind of didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. Not that I didn't take it seriously, but we were hearing news stories about things happening on the other side of the world back in November, December. Right. And you're aware of that, but you never stop to think, oh, this is going to be a major thing for me. But then it kind of starts getting closer to home. Then we got word that school was going to be out for a little bit, but then we had to kind of create one ministry plan on that. But then it was, not only is school out, but now we can't even meet in person as a staff team at the church. Okay, now what are we going to do? And so I think it kind of came in phases. And for a while it was, this isn't going to last very long. We'll be back before the end of the school year. It's all, we'll kind of bide our time with this sort of online format for now. And yet here we are, it's mid-May, and at least here in Illinois, I don't really have a good timeline of when all of this is returning back to normal. And so we're kind of much deeper into this than I initially thought that we would be.
Yeah. And I often wonder to myself, how many of us that's the case. We get the news, schools are shutting down, got to move everything online. Okay, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we were still hearing things, you'll be back up and running by Easter. So it was only going to be a matter of 3 weeks for us. And then the Easter week and we'd be back. But then news comes, Easter's online. Stay-at-home orders are being extended into May. And it sends you scurrying because, you put a temporary fix for the early weeks and you have nominal success with that because it's new and fun. And, kids are like, all right, we're online. It's super cool. But now for us, we're 9 weeks in now, and encouraging kids to tune in is getting more and more difficult. All the while, you've got to be thinking super creative to create a program that will attract them online and then keep them engaged. Because once you're online, you're watching something, and if something else pops up, you're going to go start surfing wherever it is that, is more appealing for you to go and be at. So whether it's social media or Facebook or something else on YouTube or whatever, we've noticed a real difficulty, a real struggle, continuing to maintain the engagement with our students. Now that we've completed 9 weeks, we've got one more week left. And then we're actually shutting down for we take a break between the end of school and the start of our summer calendar. So we just take a couple of weeks off to kind of retool. So we're approaching that. So I'm excited to get some time off a little bit. But it's made a huge impact. And not to take away from what you're sharing, but we were very similar to you guys coming into 2020. We had just recruited a brand new leadership team. We were in the midst of training them and releasing them. I'm only 1 year in at the church I'm at. And so we had finally built up the momentum, and we moved worship into our worship center, and students were coming out, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out. So what has been the impact for you at Good Shepherd and for your team? What has that online experience for you guys look like? Coming in the first couple of weeks, thumbs up, and then now as you move into it, what seems to be the struggles you're seeing?
Absolutely. So if we trace it back to our first online event, that would have been like March 15th was the first Sunday that we had. And for that Sunday, we were able as a staff team to still all be together at our church. And so we just, kind of over probably 48 hours threw together a live stream sort of event with all of our student ministry staff members. So there was, 5 of us or so involved, just putting something together. And I think early on there was an excitement to that because, the bottom, as you said, falls out on Friday. Students find out they're not going to be in school for at least a couple weeks. We're not going to be able to meet for church, but we were able almost immediately to turn around and say, hey, YouTube, 6:30 on Sunday, we're going to be live, be there. And there was a lot of initial excitement about that. We saw kind of an explosion of attendance that first week. Yeah. Just people like way more logging in than I thought were going to.
Right. Yeah. I was blown away. Yeah.
And so we were in that. But then even though the following week we were told, hey, we're not able to meet together as a team because of the social distancing requirements. We're shelter in place. You got to be at home. Okay. Well, now we have to figure out how do we live stream from our homes and still be a team and put on some sort of program. So I learned way more about live streaming and IT work in mid to late March than I ever thought I would know. I have nothing but increased respect for church tech teams now. Like the stuff that people do on a weekly basis to put things together is just mind-boggling to me now. But so we were doing that, and even that kind of had some momentum early on. But we then, like most churches, kind of started to see dips in our attendance. Like you would watch the viewer numbers on YouTube, and first week it was really high, and the second week it was okay, and then the third week not as much, and then the fourth week not as much. And I think more and more as students, as their whole life shifted to be online, we kind of got lost in the noise of that. I can't help but wonder, for so many of our students, as hard as it was sometimes beforehand to like, hey, put down the phone, get off the device every once in a while. Like that was also their escape in a lot of ways. And now their regular life is on their mode of escape. And so like, I think for our students, like they were just, we said zoomed out. They just had tech overload in a lot of parts of their life. And our ministry, like many ministries, kind of took the brunt of that, of just seeing the numbers kind of drop. But also what I learned through that process is that our digital strategy really reflects what our values really are. And we, for better or for worse. And for us, like we saw under pressure, we could put something together, but we also fall back on us as staff to lead it, which was the very thing we went into the school year to not do. And so as the weeks went on, we found ways to kind of reinvent it. We found opportunities to bring students in to lead worship from their basement. It might be one student with their acoustic guitar. It's not our full band, but it's a student leading worship. We had students starting to tell their faith stories, or we brought in families over Zoom to play games. And when we started to do those things, we've actually seen the uptick back up in attendance numbers. Now, it wasn't what it was that first week when everything was exciting, but we've seen an increase of that. We added more kind of middle of the week, come hang out on Zoom interactive elements that have kind of a core group of students. Those really like our student leaders that we may not have ever thought of as student leaders before, but we've kind of seen who the core of our ministry is during this time. We've really laid into our small group leaders to say, hey, we need you to be the relational strength of this. We can't follow up with every student. But if every leader is regularly contacting their students, stuff we would have wanted them to do during the school year anyway, we keep that up. That's keeping students engaged. And even what I can't help but celebrate all the time is we've seen students that would never have walked into our doors. Yeah. Whether it's because of social anxiety, whether it's because they had a bad experience once before, they'll watch a YouTube video, or we've started doing like online video game events. And I'm over an Xbox headset having conversations with high schoolers who will never show up to our church. But I get to have a 45-minute conversation with them while we're playing video games together, because I know one of the students involved and he invited a friend. And so I get to talk to that friend while we're playing video games. And so there's still these opportunities to connect with new students in ways I would have never thought about before.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I want to kind of go back to some of what you said. Unpack for me what your ministry has looked like to students online from beginning to what you're doing now. You said you've changed some things, you've
Sure.
brought more students in, but for youth workers who are maybe looking at a few more weeks before they can actually meet with students again, and they're trying to come up with some new ideas, unpack for me, like, what did those first weeks look like compared to,
Sure.
give me a little bit more details to what they look like now.
Absolutely. So that first week when we could all film together, we made the decision that we were going to film and live stream over YouTube. Now, there's a bunch of different platforms that people can use, the social media sites. We picked YouTube in part because it doesn't require any of our students to have a particular social media. Now, we have presence on Instagram. We're on Facebook mostly to connect with parents, but we wanted to pick a live stream platform that would say anybody can access this. And so we chose to live stream over YouTube. And that first event was a couple of worship songs led by staff, as well as we brought in one of our adult leaders who helps lead our middle school band. He got to be a part of it as well. And so it was a couple worship songs. And then it was short little mini messages from our staff members that was just basically words of encouragement, because for so many of our students, life was just turned upside down 48 hours earlier. And we wanted to reassure them of, the importance the Bible talks about, in the end, these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And so we talked about, what does it mean to have faith right now? What does it mean to have hope? What does it mean to show love in the midst of this new experience? Not having a clue that we would still be in this in mid-May and beyond. But we kind of started the tone with that, with a couple of, the webcam on a laptop in our church, talking to students over YouTube was kind of that first event. And that format really kind of worked for a while. But again, as we saw, the way I talk about it with people, it takes a lot for a student to get up and walk out of your Sunday night program. If they don't like it, it's really easy to click the Xbox in the corner of the YouTube window if they don't want to be there. And so if we're not doing stuff that they're engaged with, they can check out so fast that we need to adapt to that. And so what we did is, when we were then required to shelter in place at home, we said, well, we could do what we were doing before, but it would just be one person. But then we did some research and figured out how to live stream a Zoom call to YouTube. And so we would have our student ministry staff on a Zoom call at our various homes interacting with each other. And that was live streamed to YouTube, which then that added a fun element to it. People got to see our homes and we got to have a little fun together. Mm-hmm. But then as we went along, figured out, well, why can't we invite a student in? So we invited a student to be on that Zoom call who would tell their story. Or we then started adding bringing in a family to play a game together, maybe against leaders, maybe against another family, and just having some fun on that Zoom call that was all being live streamed still to YouTube, where students can easily access that content. And then along with that, in addition to our Sunday nights, we started adding, middle of the week Zoom Bible study groups, game discussion time, just as an opportunity for us to, as best as we can, have FaceTime to connect with students that way. And so we kind of added that as we went along as well. When we rolled into the month of May here, we went, so many of our students are missing big parts of the end of the school year. So we wanted to add some really fun things for them to try to give them a little bit of joy. So as we said, we added these video game nights. We've added some live streaming concerts that we're doing with some, smaller Christian bands or artists that can do stuff for our students just over YouTube and things, again, just to add these moments of, hey, like, you're not alone here. We know you're still there. We're still with you. Let's connect here around a screen and watch this thing together, be a part of it. And so we just tried to add these little pockets, as I said, like moments of joy for our students to connect with, in addition to those ongoing midweek groups, those ongoing Sunday night groups.
Yeah. That's great. Some neat ideas coming out of that. So I'm glad that you kind of went a little deeper in explaining some of those things. You live streamed the entire time. Did you do anything pre-recorded, or was it all truly live? How did that look?
We've done all of our stuff fully live since we started doing it. The one exception to that is we did a video. We pre-recorded a video for Easter because we wanted to still, instead of just normally, obviously we would take that Sunday off from our ministry, but we wanted to keep our students in this rhythm of Sunday nights. And we were worried that if we didn't bring them something, that break, because Easter was going to be so untraditional for so many families, I didn't want the fallout from that to be all of a sudden we had such way less attendance the following week. So we pre-recorded a video that was very Easter focused, emphasis on worship, a lot more music in that. Our message was spoken word poetry instead about the resurrection. We kind of packaged that together and released that on YouTube for students and families to watch on their own time instead of having to be set into the 6:30 Sunday night time, which, we wanted to respect families that have that tradition of the Easter dinner or whatever together. We didn't want to get in the way of that while still providing them with digital content.
Right. Well, that's cool. Kudos to you for going live all this time.
It is stressful. I love it. To me, from a leadership end, I think it keeps it more exciting for us. And so, plus then I think our students, they want to see us flub through our words a little bit. And I think it keeps that authenticity higher that we really want to go for.
Yeah, we did live for the first, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. And then I was asking leaders to do little pieces of it. And then we did ours over Facebook. We live streamed over Facebook, and I was using OBS software to literally put together a show and run it from my laptop. And as the weeks went on, we saw our internet connection getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And to the point that we were I'd be in mid conversation and it would just freeze. The one week, the whole thing just crashed and went down. So we made the decision to do a little bit more recorded. But man, doing everything from my computer was super, super stressful. So I applaud you for going live for as long as you guys.
The number of Sundays I sat right here and lost weight just in sweat of nervousness. You're watching that internet feed going you have excellent internet connection. Oh, now it's just okay. And you're like, oh no, what is going to happen? Because especially when we were live streaming the Zoom call, it was one thing when we were filming all together. That's one camera, one computer, one internet connection. Now on an average Sunday night, we were thinking about 5 computers and 5 internet connections, not even including the actual live stream that I was overseeing on my laptop to go to YouTube to begin with. And so incredibly stressful. Yeah. But we found that we loved kind of that nervous energy at the same time as we were doing it.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I was totally stressed out, but I did enjoy it. I think for some of the reasons that you've kind of mentioned here, that just that opportunity to keep it live and, the spontaneity of it. The last night when we finally decided to abandon the live thing, our internet connection was so bad. I mean, I had a red light saying poor connection almost the entire time. It was absolutely horrible. And I thought, man, I just put a week worth of work into this and it's totally not coming out the way I wanted it to.
Absolutely.
So it is what it is. Hey, what do you think, how do you think this time has or will impact you, your leaders, your students, and your ministry overall? Do you think it's going to be, hey, we're forever changed and we're going to have to do things differently? Or do you think it's going to be, we had some good momentum and I don't really think too much has changed. What's been the impact for you guys?
Yeah, I could answer that in a couple different ways. And so let's think, like, for me as a leader or even our staff team, like I said before, for better or for worse, I think moving into this season highlighted what our true values were. It's so easy to have stated values. Every church has a mission statement. Most youth ministries have a mission statement themselves. They have things that their core values, but those core values are really put to the test when suddenly your program model goes away and you're having to do something new. And so for us, it forced me to step back as a leader and say, really, what do I value in ministry? What is the core of who I am? Especially because I figured out you can cover a lot of blind spots in your ministry with the right lights and music and cool graphics package or fun game. You can cover a lot of weaknesses in ministry by just being entertaining. Your entertainment factor really drops in an online setting, and you can still do things that are fun and exciting, but it's different, and it forces you to have to say, what do I really think my ministry is about? Really, what is God calling me to be as a leader? And you live into that, because all of your kind of facades that you may have put up before, all of that got stripped away when we switched to this format. And so, like I said, I could have told you back in the fall that our stated value was students in leadership. But I also saw that the moment that our program went away, we fell back on staff leadership. And so if we're really, like, it took a bit for us to climb out of that and to say, no, students in leadership. And so it's been a season where, I've needed to take a step back to look inside myself, to really prayerfully reflect on, like, no, ultimately, who is God calling me to be when it comes to ministry? What is this ministry really going to be about? And to seek to live that out, not just to pay lip service to values, but to really make sure we're living that out. I think with our leaders, it's been a season where we have shown them just how necessary they are. That, I think it's easy for our leaders to think about their role for 2 hours on a Sunday night, but then suddenly where we go, it is impossible for us to connect with everybody. We need your help. That I think our leaders were challenged to step up a little bit. And even again, on a personal leadership end, it probably exposed the too low of bar that maybe we set for our leaders, or the lack of accountability we had with our leaders. To, like, we may have told them, hey, make sure you're staying in connection with your small group. But if you would have asked me in January if everybody was doing that, I couldn't really tell you. And so I think we let a lot of things kind of slip through the cracks. We just assumed we're going well. And when you're faced with a challenge like shelter in place, like quarantine, you're forced to really evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of your ministry. But I think, too, like ministry moving forward, as you asked about that, I don't think ministry will ever look the same. And that's a thing I've been telling leaders now, in part because I don't think it should. That if we come out of this in a month, 2 months, 3 months, hopefully less, but probably depending on your area, if we all go back to exactly what we were doing, and we don't take the things that we learned in this season, like the things that are going really well, then these weeks, these months, that was a waste. Like, I want to try to view this time as a gift from God. I've learned so much about digital outreach. I've learned so much about other opportunities I never would have thought of before to reach students. And so the future has to look like some hybrid of what was and what currently is. If it's not, then we've wasted this time. Like, what is the point of doing online ministry if we're just going to scrap all of it? Because as I said, like, we've seen students who would never walk in our church doors normally. connect with us online. I have to keep up something for them in the future. I don't know fully what that looks like. It's not completely what we're doing right now, but it has to be an option. Otherwise, this season is a waste.
Yeah, that's so true, and great observations in that. Yeah, that's awesome. So moving forward, what do you think things are going to look like at Good Shepherd for your students? What are you hoping? First of all, do you guys have any timeline as to when you might be able to get back with students? Have you heard anything for you guys, church-wise, state-wise, locally?
Sure. So here in Illinois, we've recently been told that we're kind of working through what is like a 5-phase plan that we got from our state government. And right now we're in phase 2 of that, which is, we're still sheltering in place. There's only essential services really opened up. Some new things expanded at the beginning of May, but there's still not a lot of anything close to life as normal. And as we kind of work through phases, slightly larger groups get to start being together. Phase 3, we get to meet in groups of 10 or less. In phase 4, it's groups of 50 or less, which is a giant leap to me. I'm still trying to understand that.
Yeah, to go from 10 to 50.
Phase 5 is, life as normal, whatever that has ever meant. So what we're in right now is thinking about, okay, we know what ministry looks like here in our current phase. We know what works well. We know what we're doing. But what does ministry look like in phase 3? Because we're starting to be able to connect with students, but in a very small environment. So we can't do what we were doing before, but I also don't want to say, hey, I know we can meet in some groups, but I don't want to see any of you right now. And so we're just going to do online. So in phase 3, we want to do something in person in some way that we can in those small, safe groups of 10, while still offering something online, because we know some families won't feel comfortable in phase 3 meeting with people. So what about in phase 4? What does it look like if we have groups of 50? Now, I know some churches watch this and they went, man, I would love to have a group of 50. Like we're blessed enough as a ministry and as a church, like we have a fairly large ministry. And so like a group of 50 still says that we can't all meet together. And so we have to look at, what does that mean? How can I split up my middle school ministry into maybe grade level groups so that we can still meet together in person, but we can't all of middle school be in the same room, or all of high school can't all be together yet because of groups of 50. And even then, in that phase, some people aren't going to be comfortable meeting in person. So we want to provide some sort of online resource for them as well. And so we're kind of talking through now, what does it look like to slowly get back to, normal? But again, normal isn't going to be what it was before. All of these things have to stay with us as we move along. So we're hoping by the beginning of next school year, we're as close to that 5th phase as possible. They say phase 4 allows students to go back to school. So we're hoping that we'll at least be in that by the end of the school year, or beginning of the school year, so that students won't start next school year online. That's our big hope right now. But we're expecting this summer to be some combination of 2, 3, and 4 in those phases. And what does that look like for us to kind of slowly implement program over the course of the summer? So like for us, what we're doing is we're saying, all right, summer calendar, it's going to be Sundays and every other Thursday, for example. And we're going to do that right now. They're going to be online, both of them. When we can, Thursdays are going to be in person, so that families are still reserving those like 2 hours on a Thursday night are still on their calendar. We just get to pivot on a dime when we need to say, all right, Thursday's no longer online, Thursday's in person. Here are the guidelines, here are the policies, here are the practices we're going to have on Thursday. You're going to come through this door. You're going to be a part of this group. We're going to spread you out here. We're going to kind of work on what is our basic schedule and then tweak it as we go to match the phases.
Yeah. How much of your summer plans have changed? I know most of us are thinking mission trips or summer camps, or where are you guys and all that stuff?
Yeah, so our 2 big events during the summer were our summer mission trips and our middle school summer camp that we do. Both of those events are not happening anymore. Part of me is relieved, and my heart goes out to camp directors and mission organizations all over who are having to make those hard decisions. I'm also kind of thankful that they made those decisions for me. And so we're taking our middle school camp experience and trying to do something for a week that is digital. Again, is another even opportunity to give our older students some leadership opportunities. We're going to do some more focused online fun activities throughout that week, still doing something for that. But then like our mission trips, we're just not doing this summer, but we're looking at kind of what could those maybe every other week get-togethers look like? Because we also want the summer to be a time where our leaders get a chance to breathe a little bit. I want my staff at the church to not be on every other day. That I want the summer to be a little bit more relaxed. And even like I want our students to miss our ministry, right? Like I want to do enough over the summer that I'm connecting with them, but I want it to be just enough so that if we are able to meet next school year, they go, man, I missed that. I want to be there. I didn't even appreciate it when I had it, but I want to get there because it's going to be great. And so we want to try to build some of that anticipation over the course of the summer as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, good stuff. You mentioned that you've learned a ton of stuff already, most of it probably being in the digital realm. But what are some of those lessons that you've learned? And how other ways have you been like helping yourself to grow through this? Yes, we've all done the digital stuff and we've learned how to stream and do all those stuff. But, one of the emphasis that our leadership has had for me and for the rest of the staff is that we also see this time as a chance for us to really focus on our own discipleship and be growing on our own and reading books and kind of connecting. Have you been doing any of that outside of the realm of digital education?
Yeah, I think for me, this season has been a ton of learning about myself. Not only again about what I value in ministry, but I think one of the challenges is when your home is also your office, you have an excuse to always be working. And I think ministry is hard enough. Anyway, no one in this line of work, works 9 to 5, right? Like it's so hard to unplug from this job already. But when I can take my laptop anywhere in my house or I have my phone on me all the time, it's really easy to work constantly. And that is hard not only on my own mental state, but also like I want to look at this time as an opportunity to invest in my family. Like I get more hours with my wife and kids in this setting than I ever would have before. And what does that look like? Like I want to appreciate sharing my dinner table as my desk with my wife in these weeks that we are here while she's doing her job. Like I want to appreciate that. And so it's been an intentional time of having to see just how easy it is for me to overwork. And, I would always encourage a leader to, take those spiritual health days for themselves, to take time to recharge. I've also seen that it's really easy for me to not do that myself.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn kind of to take this as a season, as a gift, and to say, I've got time to invest in my family. I've got time to invest in my marriage. I have time to recharge, to do some prayerful evaluation of things, to let God really speak into those settings. And I need to do that more. And so it's been a lot of learning about that, of just how unhealthy work habits and work schedules can easily become, especially when we're feeling like we're under pressure.
Yeah, it's been a very similar for me, going back to kicking things off. It's like, oh, it's only going to be a couple of weeks. And yeah, we were doing things online. It was new and it was fresh. But I also found in that I did have more time for family. And I've noticed the longer we've gone, the added pressure of constantly coming up with something online that students are going to want to see. Like my oldest son said to my wife, I feel like Dad's always working. And, it kind of, which wasn't true, but it still made me pause for a second and be like, well, what is he seeing me doing? Because, there's also been the days where we've left the house at 11 a.m., taken the bikes in the back of the truck, and we've gone down to the local trail. And as a family, we've ridden bikes, or we've done this or that. But it was still a good wake-up call for me to say, so if my son is seeing me always working, how am I drawing back and separating my time from what I should be doing in the office versus what I should be doing with my family? So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's real easy for us to just, even in the evenings, and I'm totally guilty of this, sitting there watching TV, and there's the laptop, and we're still clicking away instead of really giving our family time. So maybe with that, what encouraging words would you share with youth workers who maybe find themselves totally frustrated, exhausted from trying to be super creative, maybe a little weary themselves because they're not taking care of themselves, maybe a little detached from family because of that same idea of working all the time? What encouraging words would you share with that youth worker?
Sure. Anytime I want to speak to a youth worker, I just first always want to say thank you. So to every youth worker who's watching this, like, thanks for putting in the time, the energy, the creativity into what you're doing. And it matters that you're probably, like me, spending a lot of time stressing over your YouTube viewer numbers, but the work you're doing still matters. And remember that what you're doing, if you're putting in, if you're doing it for the glory of the Lord, if you're doing it for the kingdom, the work you do matters. And you might not have as many students showing up to things, but that's okay. And it's funny, even as I say this, like I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to the other youth leader out there, right? But
in the mirror,
I know in myself that my fallback position under stress is to prove that I'm smart enough, to prove that I'm strong enough, to prove that I'm creative enough. And that's where I looked for my value under pressure. And I know I'm not alone in that as youth leaders. And so my encouragement to every youth leader is, yes, be creative, come up with new ideas, learn new things, but let's also not ever place our value in our YouTube viewer numbers. There's always the conversation in youth ministry about, like, we don't want to play the numbers game. It's not about the number of students that are showing up. It's about the ministry that we're doing. The same is true online, that in the end, for all of us, it's not about the number of people that watched our video or are on our live stream or are coming to our small group Zoom call. It's about, am I seeking to love God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength? Am I seeking to love my neighbor, to love my students as I love myself? If I'm doing that, then in the end, what I'm doing is great. And God loves what we're doing. And so my encouragement to myself and to my fellow youth leaders is, like, do not find your value in your internet presence. Find your value in who God says that you are.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a good reminder even for me to hear you say that. I appreciate that. If other youth workers wanted to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you? Maybe they heard something you've said and, like, gosh, I would wish they would have followed up and talked a little bit more about that. How could other youth workers get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Absolutely. So there's two best ways to get a hold of me for other youth leaders. Is you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Schaible on Twitter, just my first and last name. But also, I love having these conversations with leaders. I want to help other churches to think about youth ministry in creative ways, whether it's in this quarantine season or beyond. And so you can also connect with me. I've got a website. It's ryanschaible.com. You can see some of the work that I do as well outside of my work every day at the church. I would just love to connect with other leaders that way. So find me on Twitter. You can email me through my website as well. Any of that works. Either of those two platforms, probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I was checking out your website. Great stuff there. And we'll definitely put a link to the website in the description below. And we'll also put it in the companion blog that will go with this vlog when it airs on the Youth Worker Daily. So make sure you check the description or the companion blog and connect with Ryan. Ryan, this has been super helpful, encouraging for me, and I hope encouraging for other youth workers. And I just, my goal in all of this is, I know I'm getting tired, I'm getting frustrated, and to hear from other youth workers that, one, it's okay to be a little bit, at that point of frustration, but to be encouraged and to hear some new thoughts and some ideas has really been super helpful for me. And hopefully youth workers like us will benefit from these conversations. So thanks so much for giving of your time and great wisdom. Really appreciate all of that. Let me pray for you and your ministry at Good Shepherd, and we'll wrap things up. Sound good?
Thank you.
All right, let's pray. God, I just want to thank you for the opportunity that we have through technology to connect with youth workers all over the place, and to kind of bring networking from maybe a local network to a much larger reach, so that we can hear what youth workers are doing, how they are coping through these corona shutdowns and shelter at homes and stay at home orders, but also for us to kind of talk about what the impact has been to our ministry, ways that you have created us and gifted us with ideas and abilities to do things differently, and to be able to share some of that. Those are resources and ideas that are super helpful and encouraging. And so I thank you for Ryan and his insight and his wisdom and the things that you are doing in and through him at Good Shepherd. God, I want to pray for his staff out there, that you would continue to fill them with your presence and your spirit and allow them to function well. We think of the small group leaders, how he relies on them to be connecting with his students. We ask, God, that you would continue to use them in mighty ways to reach the students that are out there at Good Shepherd. We do pray for the student ministry and the students of Good Shepherd, Lord, that as they are navigating through this time, Lord, that through the efforts of Ryan and his team and the other student leaders, Lord, that you'd be drawing them closer to you, instead of them wandering further and further away. And so I just pray that you would continue to use Ryan and his team and those at Good Shepherd to reach the students in that community. And I pray for his summer and his fall, God, that you would just line things up, that they would continue to see the fruit through the things that they've started with using their students in leadership. Thank you for this time. We pray, Lord, that it has been an encouragement to the youth workers out there, and we just pray that you continue to move in a mighty way in this season, and as we get back to life as it was, or maybe the new life as it will be, God, we will see the fruit of all of this at some point through your goodness. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Ryan, thanks so much. Really appreciate this. And hopefully we can connect again, maybe another time on some other topics here on the Youth Worker Daily. Really enjoyed. All right. Well, I hope you have enjoyed that conversation. I know coming out of it, I definitely was encouraged. Ryan had some great ideas and some good talking points. I told Ryan afterwards, I said, I'm gonna reach out to you again, because there's a couple things in there I'd love to go a little further with as we talk about just student ministry and some of the things that we're doing there. I really liked that Ryan started the year off by thinking what it would look like to gives the students more of a leadership role within their ministry. And I know a lot of us talk about student ministry and we talk about how to use our students in ministry, but I really like the fact that he was very focused on the idea of we want to give our students the microphone more. And so that's going to be a topic that we're going to go back and talk to him again with. But hopefully today's episode was a good encouraging one for you. And if you want to reach out to Ryan, all of his contact information is in the description below. You can also find it on the companion blog here at Youth Worker Daily. So go ahead and check that out. And as always, make sure you're visiting Youth Worker Daily, as we are working to post and share more and more resources on the website for you. And don't forget to look us up on social media. Follow along. For as much as we are posting stuff, we are looking for the things that you are sharing and posting, and we want to share those resources and ideas with other youth workers. So make sure you look us up at Youth Worker Daily, YTH Youth Worker Daily. Guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on the Youth Worker Daily.